Welcome to Inner Peace, Better Health, the podcast where we explore the transformative power of inner peace in achieving lasting well being. I am your host, Eric, and today we are diving deep into healing grief from the inside out. My guest is the incredible Ligia Houben, a grief expert, life transitions coach, and author of Allow Me to Live My Grief and Heal from the Inside Out. Ligia has dedicated her life to helping others transform pain into purpose. And today, she's here to share her wisdom and insights on navigating grief and cultivating inner peace. You are so welcome, Ligia.
Thank you so much, Eric. It is so beautiful to be talking with you in your podcast that touches so many lives.
Yeah, yeah. So, grief can often feel isolating. And what made you realize that true healing starts from within?
Well, the thing is that I have a story. That's my personal story. What made
Sure,
me
sure.
enter this world of the bereaved? Because I lost my. I am from Nicaragua, Central America, and I live in Miami, Florida. And I lost my father when I was 12 years old. And it was a sudden death. It was very profound. And what I realized, Eric, that the importance of healing from the inside out was when I took my first class on death and dying. I was studying psychology at the University of Miami, and then I took a class from the religious studies department. It was on death and dying. And when I took that class, every single time I went to the class, I would cry because I was confronting grief, confronting death. Because when my father died, living in Nicaragua so many years ago, 50 years ago, there was no, counseling or support groups. We found comfort in our religion. We're Catholic, but
Mhm.
there was no way to really go deep into processing and talking and all those things until I took that class many years ago. And taking that class was when I realized, wow, because I was very cheerful, very happy, very cheerful. But inside, when I talked about grief and death, is when it touched me that I realized that there was still grief in my heart. And that's when I realized the importance of really going deep to be mindful about our grief. And that's when I realized again, the mission that I had in life, which was to help the bereaved, to help the griever touch with that part in their hearts, in their souls, to be able to heal from the inside out.
Mm. Wow, it's incredible how that inner connection brings us peace. And how do you think we can reconnect with our inner self during grief when it feels like everything is falling apart?
Thank you for the question. Very insightful because instead of trying to run away,
Mm.
because that's what we generally do when we are experiencing, a strong emotion. If we are anxious or if we are scared, we want to run away from it. And the thing is that what we ignore doesn't cease to exist. It is only repressed. So
Yeah.
what the best thing we can do with our grief to establish that inner connection, to establish a
Yeah.
connection with our essence is to stay still, to embrace the grief, to embrace the emotions, to acknowledge them, to validate them. So that way we can connect with who we really are inside. So that's what helps the most instead of suppressing the emotions, repressing them, and then they come back eventually and even stronger.
Mm. Wow, that's really amazing. So I have heard about your 11 principles of transformation, and I've also heard that they are central to your work. So how did these principles come to you, and what role do they play in this grieving process?
The principles, they are so close to my heart. They are the core of my message, and I will tell you how they happened. Because as I said, I lost my father when I was a child. And when I wrote my first book, which is on grief, which is called Transform Your Loss, Your Guide to Strength and Hope, that came out because my mom, I was so close to my mom as well, because my mom became my mother and father, no, after my father died. And she told me once to write the story of my father, about his life. And I said, okay, I will, because I have written another book before. So when I started writing the book, I told her, Mommy, this book is going to be dedicated to his memory, not
Yeah.
about his life. The book about his life came eventually. I did write it, but eventually. But at that moment, I wanted to share my story with the
Mm-hmm.
world. So that book, Transform Your Loss, has 60 real stories of losses. Half of them are the loss of a loved one, but we experience other losses, such as loss of health, loss of a job, homeland, you know, any loss of a pet, different types of losses. Now, when I was writing the book, I said, Arick, well, because I talked about what losses are, the how grief manifests itself, different manifestations, not only emotionally but in other
Mm-hmm.
dimensions, not the spiritual,
Yeah.
the physical, the social, all those dimensions we express a grief. And then we I had the stories, and I said I want to give something else to the reader, because he was the reader of the book. No, I want to give them something that helps them in their grieving
Mm-hmm.
process. So that's when the 11 principles came to be. So I started writing, I write on the paper, one, two, three, writing, writing, writing. And then I stopped and I counted them. I'm like, oh, there are 11. And for me, that was so symbolic, so
Mm-hmm.
meaningful, because my father died on November 11th of
Yeah.
1971. So it was 11/11. The principles, I didn't say, they're going to be 11. No, they just happened to
Mm-hmm.
be 11. And they're precious to me, as I said, the core of my message, because the principles, what they do, it's like a guide, if you will. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a roadmap, even though we know that our grief is unique, our journey is unique. However,
Mm-hmm.
there are things that can help us, to guide us, because sometimes people don't know what to do with the grief. So they put it aside, but it's there. So with the principles, what I intended to do when I created them, when I put them together, is for the griever to process their grief. Like accept your loss is the first one, acceptance, the importance of accepting instead of resisting what has happened to us. No,
Yeah.
it's accepting, because it
Mm-hmm.
is not that we are okay that it happened. No, we are accepting the reality. And then the second principle is live your grief. That based on that principle is my latest book, the one that you mentioned, Allow Me to Live My Grief and Heal from the
Mm-hmm.
Inside Out. The latest book is based on the second principle only. Now,
Wow.
the principles themselves, then they continue with the third principle about your spiritual dimension, the value of being grateful, of being able to
Mm-hmm.
forgive, to give love. And it continues, evolving, expressing your emotions, sharing with others, taking care of yourself, doing rituals, modifying your thoughts, be living the present, rebuild your world, and visualize the life you want. So it takes you not only to the grieving process itself, but continue, in your journey moving forward with the loss in your heart.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So a lot of people try to push grief away, and
Yeah.
even when I look at my life, I
Uh-huh.
see a lot of people in my life that have gone through some things. They just try to push grief away from their lives. By I've heard my own mom telling me, like, if something. So I remember I was bullied a lot in my school,
Yeah.
and that episode completely changed my life. I was it was like I'm a new person altogether. So
Mm.
I remember when all of this happened, my mom used to tell me that keep yourself busy, keep yourself busy. However, it just did not settle with me. And I have come a long way. I have come a long, long, long way. However, one thing that I have realized is that keeping yourself busy while you are grieving is not the solution. So, I want to ask you, a lot of people try to push grief away. How do we shift our mindset from avoiding grief to fully experiencing it as part of the healing process?
First, I want to thank you for sharing, and my heart goes out to you. And
Ah,
how beautiful it. No, yes, it's your story, and I love that because we all have a story, and that
yeah,
is so inspiring that you were able, to
yeah,
transform, because that's why a transformation, to transform that experience. And you have come a long way, as you say. So thank you for sharing that. That's precious. And
yeah,
because, some people, when they are going through a painful situation, like, the one you experienced, the one I experienced, and the one that, many people experience, they want exactly to do that, just to distract themselves, and your mom, of course, she said it with her best intention, because we don't know what to do with grief, Arick. That's the thing, that in our culture, in our lives, sometimes we just don't know, because this is something that they don't teach in schools. At least,
mhm,
Nicaragua didn't, live in the United States, and they don't teach in school like really how to deal with grief. That death is part of life. That issues, that situations, painful situations, challenging situations like the one you experienced, they happen. They're part of life. So instead of running away, to face it. That's the best thing we can do, face emotions, to acknowledge them, and to learn how to handle them. Because
yeah,
if we try to distract ourselves, the 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 emotion is still there.
yeah,
You just put it on the shelf, and you're
mm,
distracting yourself, doing this, doing that. People sometimes they abuse, let's say, alcohol because they want to
mm,
forget. So again, another way that, it doesn't make the grief disappear.
yeah,
Sometimes people, they sleep a lot. That's something that happens a lot. They go,
yeah,
sleep a lot, because sleeping helps them not to think about the
uh,
issue that is causing pain. But again, when they wake up, the issue continues there. So the best thing we can do is to sit with it. And I'm gonna recommend actually a book that you will appreciate, and to, the people, the amazing people that also listen to your podcast. The
mm-hmm,
book is called Grieving Mindfully.
mm-hmm,
Grieving Mindfully. And the thing is that it's written by Samet Kumar. And I happen to know him. I met him at a conference. Such a spiritual man. He is amazing.
mm,
He's great, beautiful. And he talks about that, grieving mindfully, because it's
mm,
to sit, is to really go there and be able to process all that. That is the first thing. Instead of running away, to do your grief work, as we say, grief work, to sit and do your grief work. Now,
yeah,
having said that, and I mentioned this in my latest book, the there is a model that is like the dual model of grief, that
yeah,
it's from Strawberry Schultz, and they say that, they are psychologists, and they say that it is very common from us when we're grieving to move. It's like a pendulum, that it will move from loss orientation, that we are grieving, we're thinking about our loss, we are experiencing all these emotions, we're grieving, no? Loss orientation. And then
yeah,
we move like a pendulum to restoration orientation, to restore
yeah,
ourselves to who we are becoming because of the grief. And then
mm,
you may go back, because it's like that, no? Like a pendulum. But they
yeah,
found that it was so important to acknowledge that and to find balance, because if not, we may become overwhelmed. And it's important also to recognize that sometimes when we are grieving, to experience that sense of being overwhelmed is
yeah,
extremely common. It is
yeah,
common. So that's what we want to do, to to find someone that can help us in a sense of listen to us. That's the best help we can do to give to someone who's grieving. That's just to listen, not judging, not telling them what to do or what to feel or you should be feeling this way. No, listening. So that helps us. Also, another thing that helps us is to write down how we feel. Write it down, write it down.
Yeah.
So there are things that we can do, to change our physical state that also helps us with emotions. So there are things, meditation is beautiful, how to
Yeah.
meditate. So different things that we can do to help ourselves process our grief.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you, Leah, for sharing your wisdom and vulnerability today.
Thank
Like,
you.
if anyone's listening and feeling called to start your own journey of healing, remember it begins from within. And I have been really inspired by a guest today, and I have learned so many things from the guest who was here. It was an absolute honor. It was a pleasure to have you on our show, ma'am.
Thank you. It has been an honor to be in your beautiful show. Thank
Yeah.
you so much to you. All my blessings to you and to the beautiful people who are listening.
Yeah. So take that first step, embrace your grief, and allow yourself to transform. I hope today's episode has sparked something in you to honor your emotions, find peace, and move forward with purpose. I'll see you next time on Inner Peace and Better Health.